Education. Reading and writing and arithmetic and grammar do not constitute education any more than a knife, fork, and a spoon constitute a dinner. Education is not learning, it is the exercise and development of the powers of the mind. There are two great methods by which this end may be accomplished. It may be done in the halls of learning or in the conflicts of life. The basic of all education is to learn by doing. Education is the harmonious development of all our faculties. It begins in the nursery and goes on at school, but does not end there. It continues through life, whether we will or not. The only question is whether what we learn in afterlife is wisely chosen or picked up haphazardly. The best training a parent can give a child is to train the child to train himself. The entire object of true education is to make people not merely do the right things, but enjoy them, not merely industrious, but to love industry, not merely learned, but to love knowledge, not merely pure, but love purity, not merely just, but to hunger and thirst after justice. The great ends of education is to discipline rather than to furnish the mind, to train it to the use of its own powers rather than fill it with the accumulation of others. The object of education is to prepare the young to educate themselves throughout their lives. Education is not intended to make lawyers or clergymen, soldiers or schoolmasters, farmers and artisans, but men. I call a complete and generous education that which fits a man to perform justly, skillfully, and magnanimously all the offices, both private and public, of peace and war. The object of a wise education is, in the words of Solomon, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. Education does not consist merely in studying languages and learning a number of facts. It is something very different from the higher. It is something very different from and higher than mere instruction. Instruction stores up for future use, but education sows seeds which will bear fruit, some 30, 60, some even 100-fold. Throughout education, there is a great deal of pumping into you, so to speak. Now, the best part of education is giving something out from you. Let something of thought and of imagination issue from you. Think independently so far as you can in youth, not so much as in adult age, but begin in youth the process of independent thought. Education today, more than ever before, must see clearly the dual objectives, educating for living and educating for making a living. In this country, we emphasize both liberal and practical education, but often it is a liberal education for one and a practical education for another. What we need is a general education combining the liberal and the practical, which helps a student achieve the solid foundation of understanding of man's social institutions, of man's art and culture, of the physical, biological, and spiritual world in which he lives. Thomas A. Edison had only 3 months of schooling during his entire life. He did not like education, neither did he die poor. Henry Ford had less than a 6th grade schooling, but he managed to do pretty well by himself financially. The missing link in all systems of education known to civilization today may be found in the failure of educational institutions to teach their students how to organize and use knowledge after they acquire it. How much education is needed? It is a waste of time and effort to try to make lawyers, teachers, scientists, doctors, or preachers out of people who prefer and are better fitted to become foresters, mechanics, farmers, sailors, or even chauffeurs. See? Every person has two educations, one which he receives, from others, and one more important, which he gives himself. I have no technical and no university education and have just had to pick a few things up as I went along. See? Education is the sum total of one's experience, and the purpose of higher education is to widen our experiences beyond the circumscribed existence of our own daily lives. There are 3 schoolmasters for everybody that will employ them: the senses, intelligent companions, and books. The best education in the world is that got by struggling to get a living. Most of the important things that human beings ought to understand cannot be comprehended by youth. Those who have not distinguished themselves at school need not on that account be discouraged. The greatest minds do not necessarily ripen the quickest. The world is a great university. From the cradle to the grave, we are always in God's great kindergarten, where everything is trying to teach us a lesson.